Hello and welcome back once again to the Wrestling Rant. It's time for the Raw review. October 21st, 2013 from Memphis, Tennessee. The show starts off with a recap from last week, the main event, which was the tag title match. Cody Rhodes and Goldust versus Rollins and Reigns of The Shield. No disqualification match. Dean Ambrose, the third member of The Shield, got involved. And the Big Show came down and he got involved. And essentially costed The Shield the match, and hence the tag titles. They recap that whole bit at the start of the show. And then we come into the arena where the King of Kings music hits, and out comes Triple H and Stephanie. Much to everyone's chagrin. Because, how many weeks in a row has Raw started with this crap? It's the same thing over and over again. It gets old, it's boring. Triple H sucks at promos, and so does Stephanie. And they always have. Why do we keep wasting everybody's goddamn time with this shit? Anyways, as they're coming out, we get another recap, this time from SmackDown last Friday. And it shows Big Show KOing Brad Maddox. Maddox, by the way, apparently has a concussion, and we won't be seeing him for a while. They also happen to mention that later on tonight, we're going to have the contract signing between Daniel Bryan and Randy Orton for the WWE title match at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. Shawn Michaels, the special guest referee, and it is going to be a Hell in a Cell match. They confirmed that. But after the hype for that, they also happen to announce that Daniel Bryan is going to be going against Dean Ambrose of The Shield after this segment. Finally, after we get all of that out of the way, Stephanie decides to talk about the pay-per-view. She hypes up all the different matches, yada yada. Triple H talks, it's boring as hell, and then all of a sudden they're interrupted by the Big Show, who is live via satellite on the Titantron. And he's, talking about what they've done to him, and he's complaining. Stephanie freaks out because she's like, how is he able to get on the Titantron? She goes over to the producer guy who's sitting at ringside, and she's bitching at him, trying to get him to shut it off and all this crap. And Stephanie finally gets back in the ring, and she tells Show to shut up over the microphone. And he's like, yeah, no, I don't think so. You've cost me my job, all this and that and the other thing. And then Stephanie starts counting down. And when she gets to 1, the feed of Big Show on the Titantron cuts off. Triple H continues his spiel about whatever the fuck it was. And then he introduces Dean Ambrose. But Daniel Bryan comes out instead. And we cut to a commercial break. When we come back, Ambrose is already in the ring, and it's time for their match. Now, of course, the two of these guys put on a damn good match. There was another commercial in the middle of the match, and what ended up happening is... I'm trying to remember exactly how it went. Ambrose, I think, got out of something from Bryan, and Ambrose went for like a schoolboy roll-up, but Bryan reverses it midway through the schoolboy, hooks his arm around, gets him in the yes lock, and Ambrose has to tap out. So Bryan wins by submission. Still a pretty damn good match. They say up next, CM Punk is going to talk about his match with Paul Heyman and Ryback, and that's up next, and we cut to another commercial. When they come back, Punk comes out on the stage, and he talks about the match. It's, the same sort of stuff. We cut backstage, Triple H, Stephanie, and Vicky are talking. Vicky apparently is filling in for Brad Maddox because he's out with a concussion. Boy, I really wish that had been the other way around, because I really wish Vicky was out with a concussion, and Brad would end up filling in for Vicky on SmackDown. Maybe then I might actually watch SmackDown. But anyways, apparently they're right outside the office. They go into the office, and then all of a sudden there's Shawn Michaels. And the three of them are all talking, whatever the hell. Vicky pisses off, and then it's Triple H, Stephanie, and HBK, and he's talking, and whatever the fuck. Cutting back out to the arena, Santino Marella's music hits. And he comes out accompanied by Hornswoggle and the Great Khali, and all three of them are dressed up as... guess who? They're in Memphis. No, it's not Jerry Lawler, it's the other king. They're all dressed up as Elvis. Well, Santino's really got the whole thing going on. He's got the jumpsuit, the fake wig and sideburns, and the sunglasses. I think Khali and Hornswoggle were just wearing wigs, but like, whatever, it's lame no matter what. They cut to another commercial break, and when they come back, 3MB is in the ring. Of course, our resident jobbers. But this is not going to be a tag match, it's a singles match. Santino versus Heath Slater. This match was shit. It really was. More comedy crap with Santino. It's like he can't wrestle in a serious manner. So they just... let's put him in an Elvis costume. Let's make fun of everything, because we can't possibly have anybody take Santino seriously at this point. This guy is never going to be anything more than a joke. He's never going to be mid-card champion, not a serious one anyways, and there's no way in hell he's ever going to be a main event champion. He's never going to be world heavyweight champion, and he's never going to be WWE champion. If he wants to entertain people, great. Go be a fucking comedian. You are lousy as a professional wrestler. Santino wins with the Cobra. And the Cobra happens to have an Elvis wig as well. After the match, Santino runs over to the commentary table. And he stands on top of it and he's talking and he says, you know what, not only do we have Elvis and all this shit, but we have the actual king of Memphis, Jerry Lawler. And he has Jerry stand up on the fucking commentary table, and he does, and whatever the fuck, and that shit's over finally. We cut, oh yeah, and they dance while they're on top of the fucking table too. Ugh. Anyways. Cutting backstage, Randy coming through one of the hallways. He has a match against Dolph Ziggler next. They cut to another commercial. When we come back from the commercial, we do another recap of Triple H and Stephanie and the Big Show from earlier. Heaven forbid we forget anything from about 20 minutes ago. Do they really think we're that dumb that we have memory like a fly? We just forget everything like that? Seriously? Remind us of 20 minutes ago. Yeah, go ahead. We can't possibly remember this shit. It's all so complicated and complex. They recap that bullshit. And then Ziggler's music hits, and out he comes to a big pop, of course. And then Randy's music hits, and out he comes as well. Start having the match. And of course, these two, they put on a good match. Randy ends up winning, of course, with an RKO. The only other note I have is that Ziggler actually looked pretty good during this match. He got in plenty of offense. It wasn't just a squash match. It was actually a pretty back and forth kind of match. After that, we get another fucking recap. This time of John Cena's bullshit. The whole thing of his recovery from the tricep surgery and him getting back into shape. Whatever. More hype for the contract signing later on, and we cut to another commercial break. When we come back, AJ's music hits, and she comes out with Tamina. And then the Bellas come out. It's time for a tag team match. But before that, while the Bellas are coming out, we get a recap from SmackDown of AJ versus Brie, where Brie actually won. We finally start the tag match. And of course, you have the Bellas. It's a shitty match. Brie ends up getting the win on AJ again. Another X Factor gets her the win. And they cut to a commercial break. Coming back, Renee Young is backstage looking to interview Paul Heyman. But before that, another motherfucking recap. You see, all these fucking recaps, I don't watch SmackDown, which is what they do end up recapping here, by the way. I don't watch SmackDown, but I at least take notes on the shit. I know what happened. I don't give a rat's ass. They don't need to recap this shit. However, this was something from SmackDown last Friday that wasn't part of the notes that I read, and so it wasn't part of my rant for SmackDown. CM Punk had a match versus Big E Langston, and Punk won. But after the match, Ryback and Axel come down with Heyman, and they attack Punk. Well, they get back into the ring, and then all of a sudden Big E gets into the ring. And he helps Punk fight off Axel and Ryback. So Big E has effectively turned face. They recap that. And then we cut back to Renee, who is still backstage, of course, and then up come Heyman, Axel, and Ryback. And Heyman starts talking. He's animated as all hell. He's going off about all these other things. And I'm like, what in the fuck are you talking about, man? Like, I couldn't even hardly catch most of what he said. Something about a volcano, and I'm like, the lava, and I'm like, what the fuck? And then he says, but that's not me, because I'm not all emotional. And I'm like, really? Because it sure as hell looked like you was. He's like, I'm controlled and laid back. Whatever. All of a sudden, up comes Big E. And he's staring down Axel, and he's like, look, you want a match? I give you one. And Axel looks like he's pissing himself. He probably was. So apparently we're going to have a match between Big E and Axel. Big E walks off. After that, we get another recap from last week. And that was of HBK talking after, his acceptance speech for being voted into being the special referee. And it cuts into Daniel Bryan talking. These are some interviews from the past of Bryan and HBK talking about Bryan's training. Bryan, of course, came from Shawn Michaels' school down in Texas. And it's basically a mentor-student kind of thing where they're showing how Bryan was trained down in Shawn Michaels' wrestling school, and Michaels talking about how talented Bryan is, all that kind of stuff. After that, the Wyatt music hits, and out come these three fuckwits. And during their entrance, they can't even show the full thing because it's so boring at this point. They cut to a commercial. When they come back, The Miz and Kofi Kingston are already in the ring. This completely random tag team, they were random last week, and it's still fucking random this week. Michael Cole ends up referring to them as friends, and I'm like, really? Since when are The Miz and Kofi friends? I'm pretty sure they hated each other 6 months ago. Whatever, though. Who cares? Yeah, time for another tag match. It's basically a repeat of last week. It's Harper and Rowan versus The Miz and Kofi. Again, not so great of a match. I believe it was Harper. Yeah, Harper got the win on Kofi. He hit a big discus clothesline on Kofi after Kofi had given the Trouble in Paradise to Rowan, who was on the apron. He knocks Rowan off the apron with the Trouble in Paradise and then turns around and gets flattened by the discus clothesline. After the match, Harper and Rowan continue beating up Kofi. Miz comes in for the save, but he gets overwhelmed by Harper and Rowan. And of course he gets laid out. And then they tie him in the ropes. This is a spot I haven't seen in a long time. And then Bray comes in the ring. He finally gets up off his lazy ass. And he talks. And he cuts another boring promo. And at the end of it, they do the cutaway gag again. Miz is still tied in the ropes. And I'm like, okay, well, where'd they go? Did they kidnap Miz like they did to Kane? Apparently Bray has something against The Miz. I don't understand why. And the way that The Miz has been treated over the last few months, if they're really trying to make Bray look good or whatever, Miz is not the person they want to have him going against. He's a face, but fucking people don't really care about him all that much anymore. Anyways, after the cutaway gag, they cut to commercial. When they come back, Curtis Axel is coming out, accompanied, of course, by Heyman and Ryback. And then Big E comes out. It's time for their match. But the match doesn't start because before it starts, Ryback comes in from behind and attacks Big E. And it's Ryback and Axel beating the hell out of Big E, but Big E's fighting back and still trying to look competitive. Big E manages to kind of fight off Ryback and Axel, or he kind of floors the both of them. They're out on the outside. Heyman comes up from behind Big E with a kendo stick and cracks him across the back with it, and Big E don't even flinch. He turns around looking at Heyman, and Heyman looks like he drops his fudge because he runs for his life, but Big E, or Ryback and Axel start swarming on Big E again. And then out comes CM Punk for the save. And we got us a big four-man brawl going on. And then, of course, since Brad Maddox is gone, out comes Vicky Guerrero, "Excuse me!" with her cunt voice. And of course, in true Teddy Long fashion, we gonna make this a tag team match, players. Holla, 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 holla. Of course, tag match. That's after the commercial break. We cut to a commercial, of course, and when we come back, the match is already going on. Turns out to be a decent match. Big E gets the win when he hits the big ending on Curtis Axel, and he gets the win, obviously. Punk had to take out Ryback to make sure he wouldn't interfere, but whatever. After the match, Heyman is still standing by ringside, even though Axel and Ryback have already buggered off. Punk looks over at him, and then he slides out of the ring like a boss, and he starts chasing after Heyman. Heyman jumps out through the crowd, and Punk's chasing him. Heyman's out the friggin' door, and Punk's just standing there in the crowd. They're cheering and everything, of course. And that's the end of that segment. And after that, we get treated to what was probably one of the funniest and best segments of the night. We cut backstage to one of the rooms somewhere, and here's R-Truth in front of this giant wall of merchandise, and he's like out in the concession stands, the merchandise booth, right? And there's John Cena shirts and all these other people's shirts, Daniel Bryan, the shirts, and then he's got a desk in front of him with even more merchandise, and he's just selling this stuff like a hustler, just like, I'm about to sell this stuff, and I can't remember all the stuff he was saying, but it was fucking random as hell, and it was funny as hell. And he's talking about, you can use promo code TRUTH on WWEShopZone.com to get 20% discount or whatever on all this crap. Help me, help you, helping me, helping you to get this best merchandise and be the best seller and all this shit. And I was just like, what in the fuck? But it was funny. And it was so random. After that, more hype for the contract signing later on, and we cut to another commercial break. When we come back, Tons of Funk are finishing their entrance with the Funkahors. And they get their pyro and everything, and then the Real Americans come out with Zeb Coulter, of course. Zeb Coulter's on commentary for this. While they're coming out, we get another recap from SmackDown of Los Matadores and El Torito attacking... Well, El Torito attacks Zeb Coulter, and this is what distracted the Real Americans in their match with whoever the fuck they were in a match with. It doesn't matter. The Real Americans ended up losing that match. And of course, Coulter's bitching up a storm on commentary. And then they cut to another picture-in-a-picture promo, but it's El Torito talking. And he speaks in Spanish, of course. Can't believe they're letting this bull talk. Anyways, tag team match, Tons of Funk versus the Real Americans. It was mostly boring. The Real Americans ended up getting the win. Cesaro gave the Cesaro swing to Brodus, and then went over and clocked Tensai. No. After the big swing, he tagged in Swagger, who came in and clobbered Tensai off of the apron, and then he locked Brodus in the Patriot Lock, and Brodus tapped out. So the Real Americans win. Coulter gets into the ring, and he's got this bag, and he says, I want to introduce you to my new little friend. And he pulls out of the bag a bull whip. And he says, and that ain't no bull. And then he cracks the whip, and I think they actually had to pipe the actual whip cracking sound over the PA system. Whatever the fuck. They're building to a feud between the Real Americans and the Matadors, and I really couldn't give a shit less. It's at this point that they finally announce the kickoff match for the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. And it's going to be another rare Intercontinental title defense from Curtis Axel, and he's defending against Big E Langston. Hopefully, Big E will finally be the person to take the title away from Curtis Axel. We can only hope. After that, there's more shit with Cena, who gives a fuck, and then we get another recap from SmackDown. This time, it's of Del Rio beating up Josh Matthews. Whatever. Back in the arena, it sounds like Goldust music hits. But what it actually turns out to be is a remix mashup of Goldust's music with Cody Rhodes' the lyrics from his music mashed together. And it actually sounded kind of cool. So it was the Goldust music with Cody's lyrics, the dashing lyrics and all that crap. You're on this smoking mirrors, all that shit, you know. So they come out and they sit at commentary, and then they cut to a commercial break. When they come back, they announce for SmackDown this Friday, there's going to be another edition of Miz TV. This time with Randy Orton. And I can only imagine how bad this is going to go, because they still hate each other. It's probably going to be another fight between them. Brian will probably come out and get involved and whatever the fuck. Anyways, the Rhodes are still on commentary, and then the Shield comes out. Rollins and Reigns accompanied by Ambrose. And apparently what this is going to be is a number one contendership match for the tag team titles. Yes, despite the fact that Rollins and Reigns are the former champions and they should automatically have a title rematch, they decided to kind of show continuity by bringing back the Usos, who, if you remember correctly, they supposedly won number one contendership to the tag titles before the whole thing with Cody and Goldust came up. So, of course, after the Shield comes out, the Usos come out, and it's time for a match between them to decide who will be the true number one contenders. The match gets going, and it's actually fairly good, mostly because of the Shield guys. There's a commercial break, and finally, what ends up happening is Ambrose is outside, or on the outside the whole match, and he's just yelling at Cody and Goldust. And finally, after a while, Cody has enough of it. He stands up, he takes off his jacket that he's wearing, because Cody's actually like in a suit. Goldust is in his full Goldust attire, complete with the Darth Maul face paint. Cody finally stands up and he takes off his jacket and he starts unbuttoning the cufflinks on his nice dress shirt. And then Ambrose pushes him and knocks the headset off of him. And then, of course, Cody and Goldust start beating the shit out of Ambrose. And then there's Rollins, who was on the outside. He gets into it with him, and a whole big brawl breaks out between all three teams. Even the Usos get to fighting. Of course, the referee has to call for the bell, DQ. Nobody really wins the match. And we got a big brawl. The Shield has the upper hand for a minute, and they had Goldust isolated, but then in comes Cody for the save, and then the Usos come out, and the Rhodes and the Usos chase off the Shield, and the two of those teams are left in the ring. They don't really do anything to each other, and that's basically just the end of that segment. So if you can't see coming what is obviously coming, we'll get to that in a minute. After that segment, they say up next is the contract signing finally, and they cut to another commercial break. After the commercial, they announce that at Hell in a Cell, the pay-per-view, there's going to be a triple threat match for the tag team titles. The Rhodes will defend against the Usos and the Shield. Triple threat for the tag titles. Triple H and Stephanie are back in the ring, and then Randy comes out and Daniel Bryan comes out, and then Triple H feels it necessary to give Shawn Michaels an introduction, even though he says himself that Shawn doesn't really need an introduction. Shawn, of course, comes out, and he gets his pyro like always. Stephanie starts out by letting Randy talk, and Randy talks, and, you know, it's his same old shtick. I'm gonna take you through hell in the pay-per-view, and blah, blah, blah. When he's finally done talking, he signs the contract, and then Bryan talks, and then he signs the contract. Triple H starts talking, and we get all this, we've got like 3 different conversations going on at the same time. Triple H is talking to Daniel Bryan, and Daniel Bryan's like, why don't you try and face me, Triple H? And Triple H is like, I wouldn't waste my time on you. I wouldn't come back for anybody but The Undertaker or The Rock or Brock Lesnar or shit like this. And then HBK and Triple H are having something, and Shawn is just trying to ask, like, what do you have against Bryan? What is it that you have against him and all this stuff? And then Randy's still talking at Bryan, and we have this big, huge clusterfuck of conversations going all over the place. And then all of a sudden, the camera looks up over Bryan's shoulder, up at the Titantron, and the Titantron flips to this picture from backstage, the parking area. Here comes a big semi-truck plowing through the backstage area. And they're like, holy shit, who the fuck is that? And JBL finally goes, it's the Big Show. And you can see into the windshield, it is the Big Show. He's driving a big rig right into the freaking arena. And he pulls it in right off to the side of the stage, right underneath the Titantron. And he comes out basically just to distract Triple H and Stephanie and Randy Orton. And Big Show finally is like motioning, he's like, hey, turn around. Randy finally turns around and eats the big running super knee to the face from Bryan. Bryan gets the hell out of the ring, of course. Bryan gets out of the ring and he goes up the ramp and over to the stage, and he gets up on top of the semi and he's doing the yes, yes, and Big Show's hanging out the driver's side, yes, Yes, and that's pretty much how the show goes off the air. Triple H and Stephanie are left standing in the ring with Shawn Michaels, and Randy's floored because he's out after taking the knee that beat Cena. That's the end of the show. Overall, once again, this show was kind of boring, although we did get a couple of good matches. Once again, Bryan and Ambrose that started the show was pretty damn good. It was obvious somebody told them backstage, go out there and get the crowd fired up. And they did. They put on a damn good match, only to have it followed by complete shit with Santino and Slater. But then Ziggler and Orton came out to bring the crowd back up. That was another good match. And then after that, we get it brought back down with another shit match. AJ and Tamina versus the Bellas. And then we get more crap with the Wyatts taking on Miz and Kofi. And then we had the tag match, Ryback and Axel versus Biggie and Punk, which was decent. And then we had another boring match, the Tons of Funk versus Real Americans. And then the Shield and Usos match, it was actually a fairly good match up until the stupid finish. Although I understand they wanted to set up the triple threat, whatever. It was still a fairly decent match. And that was your last match, actually. So, Shield and the Usos actually main evented. Yeah. So once again, that was Raw from October 21st, 2013, Memphis, Tennessee. Pretty boring aside from a couple of pretty damn good matches. I'll try to get my notes up on Wednesday or Thursday from SmackDown. I'm actually working a full week this week, so I'll probably still have time. But I'm probably not going to be able to see all of the pay-per-view on Sunday. But I will get around to doing my predictions like I normally do. And like I said, I will get the SmackDown spoilers up when I can. Like I said, Wednesday or Thursday, something like that. Look forward to the spoilers, and then my predictions for the pay-per-view, and then, of course, the pay-per-view on Sunday. I will try to see as much of it as I can after I get off work. But thank you for watching once again. Join us next time, and we will see you then for another episode of the Wrestling Rant.